So today we're going to be doing a online audition for people who want to come to the Bosque Village. In with us right now is John, and he's already made his application to come. We're going to learn a little bit about him and talk about what his experience in the Bosque Village might be. Yeah, so let's start with you, John. Can you tell me about yourself a little bit, or us, I guess?
Yeah. So basically, I'm just a 20-year-old from the Northeast of America, born and raised in southern New Hampshire, and a lot of people, I guess, consider that more of Massachusetts. You could kind of think about it as a North Boston suburb. Both of my parents have are employed in Massachusetts, around that big area of infrastructure, whatever you want to call it. But I pretty much grew up kind of playing video games, skateboarding, kind of not really into a lot of what was kind of set up for me and stuff as far as schooling and just all that. And only recently have I really been able to find through the internet and just kind of exploring my own interests, a lot of different off-grid and permaculture communities and all this information of lifestyles and culture, kind of in contrast to kind of what I was raised in. And so that's kind of what I've been going full force at for the last 2 years, since just kind of going out adventuring, trying to learn stuff, and not really not worrying too much about getting myself in a position to to have a lot of money or buy things or live a certain lifestyle that seems to be more rewarded. I don't know what word to use, but nonetheless, I at this point in my life, I lived in Colorado the last year of my life. I moved out to Southwest Colorado, and it was a really cool experience to live out in that sort of community, kind of in a town called Durango. And I'm since now back in the Northeast at my mother's house in a city called Nashua, New Hampshire. And at this point, I have a bunch of money saved up from different jobs I've worked and whatnot, and I'm kind of just looking for the next place, so to speak. I have a lot of options. I could do a lot of things, but I'm just kind of searching for a good place to kind of start with the vision I see, and trying to be more involved with a sustainable culture rather than kind of just doing the same old thing like maybe a lot of my peers are doing that I'm not so into.
Yeah. Was there something in your history or somebody in your life or something you ran into that caused you to initially be interested in alternatives?
Well, it's hard to say, and I kind of say this to a lot of people actually, and that I just happened to smoke some marijuana as a kid, but before I did that, like I researched it pretty thoroughly on the internet, and that was the first thing that I really researched on the internet that made me say, like, wow, there is so much to this. There is such a culture and information behind this that is never talked about, like in mainstream, whatever you want to kind of call that industry, mainstream society. Like they don't ever talk about, any of these benefits, and they kind of frame it. And, there's propaganda on both sides, but I think that was somewhat of the catalyst that really got me interested in exploring the internet, and just really, really being open to different mindsets, and trying to go onto the internet and just see, not so much, say, oh, this is, I'm going to believe everything I read, but using that as a tool to say, I'm going to gather all of these different opinions from individuals rather than trusting any one source to just be my source. And I think that's really been kind of like the philosophy behind, everything that I'm learning as far as permaculture and, how to build a community and all these different information sources, because I think that's really given me the ability to see, even your community, all these different ways of living that wouldn't be promoted in maybe, like modern education and stuff like that. So
right.
I
So you
think
can use critical
that's pretty
reasoning and
much
then
the
using the
catalyst.
internet to get all kinds of different perspectives. That's fantastic. That's actually one of my hopes for the world, is that finally we have an uncontrolled medium where we can actually talk to each other and learn. And when I was growing up, that did not exist. I could go to the library and work my ass off to get information that is still from fairly official sources. But now you can find everything, and you do have to think then, well, how do I know what's true? There's too many points of view. So that's fantastic. I have great hope for new generations that are growing up with that kind of access.
Oh yeah. I definitely kind of consider myself a child of the internet generation.
Cool. And then how did you hear about the Bosque Village?
Well, actually, it's I heard about it on kind of a YouTube suggestion. So I had just been researching on YouTube, on my account, like different off-grid communities, like trying to look at different stuff. And it wasn't actually your page that showed up. It was the account of somebody who visited you by the name of Oogie, and his YouTube page, like Photographo Oogie. And like he has a whole like 56-minute video of a lot of different clips that you had made and that are on your page, but just all, merged into one. And I watched that whole video and I was like, wow, they've really kind of, I guess I find a lot of incomplete thoughts, so to speak. Like there's a lot of people talking about this permaculture stuff, but there's less people that have put it into so much action like you have. And that, just seeing that one video is like, wow, they're really actually going out and doing all this stuff and learning from it. And like, that's how I discovered it, through a YouTube suggestion and one of your visitors.
Yeah, and as we've talked about, that's one of the things I actually want to improve, because the videos are really the best way to communicate with people. So we're making one right now. People generally don't read, and even if they read, you can't really get the tone of a place, So absolutely, I think videos are going to be the solution. We just put some new ones up on YouTube. We have somebody killing a rooster for the first time as part of an exploration of, if you're going to eat meat, then how should it be raised, and are we willing to kill our own meat? We just did one where we went down to the local town and market day, and that was pretty fun, and it shows some of the local culture and some of the kind of outside adventures. Usually, of course, we're here in the Bosque. It's fairly isolated. But yeah, videos can be the way to go. So if you come down here, then you'll be on camera. Are you okay with that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Okay. And I kind of agree with you in that whole video being a really powerful tool to kind of, expose, everything that's going on there. I think it's a really good tool, and just the level of, I guess the capability that we have to share those videos now for free is just amazing. And I think that's just a great concept to kind of make like a weekly or some sort of, succession of videos that, keep coming up for people. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. Were there particular areas of the Bosque, or like kind of topics or types of projects that interest you? Energy stuff, or garden stuff, or art stuff, or?
Yeah. Well, I guess primarily I was into it for kind of the permaculture food forest farming.
Cool.
And that's something that I really have never experienced in any real sense. I mean, I've only, in the past 2 years been really trying to like source out everything that I eat, and really being aware of like all of the money that I spend and who it's going to, and, how that whole system goes out. And I've been able to, find farmers markets and, different little local stores and stuff. But I think it's not only, I think it will primarily that whole food farming and, that permaculture aspect is my main, I'd love to learn just, how you guys do that. But even taking that further, I think there's an aspect of like self-sustainability to it, but I think that it's also important to try and be as most self-sufficient as you can, but you still can abandon the idea of like having a community and trading with the community. And I think that's something that I didn't even really think about until I kind of saw some of the stuff you guys were doing, in that, how to, use that self-sustainability to even have, that excess to be able to trade that. And just, I would just be interested to see like an actual community, like putting these ideas into effect. And, rather than just talking about, well, this would be ideal if we could do this, to actually see it in action and having it grow as a process.
So, yeah, that is the interesting part, because it certainly isn't perfect here. I have plenty of criticisms of my own place. And so it isn't perfect, but I like your attitude on that. It's an ongoing thing of developing not just what happens here, because as you saw in that video by Oogie, often I'm here as a hermit. What I found is that the community I'm currently really involved with is the local town nearby. And so I have increasing relations with them. And this isn't really like a survivalist project where I want to be removed and self-sustaining and I got my shit. Because really to survive, we need food security for everybody. Because if you're the only person with resources and then things go to hell, then you won't have any resources anyway. So I'm very interested in always serving the community and building them up so that we all are insulated from problems if there's an earthquake or social unrest or something. And of course, trade is an option. That's always a good idea. It's for now, the project, I mean, I've been doing this since 2004. And a lot of people come in, they say, well, that has a lot of potential because, there's so much more to do. I think finally at this point, I've got the infrastructure in the state where I can invite more people. I have had, I don't know how many people have come through, 1,500, 2,000, something. But I stopped for a while and took a step back because what I want to do is make sure the systems here are such that when people come in, they fit into an energy conscious system. There's a schedule for things. All the resources are planned out so that we're not having waste. Otherwise, if we just get a bunch of people in who want to party, we have a really fun time, but we do not actually create a better society. So one of the parts of that, and I'm warning you, I guess, is that there are rules here. It's not a do whatever the hell you want kind of place. We're punctual. We get up early in the morning. So people get up before the sun rises, and then they see the sun come up over the lake, and we have breakfast. And that's partly because that's probably a healthy way to live anywhere. But because we have so little electricity, we want to live in the light. We want to get up, be awake during the daylight hours and do stuff. And then, of course, there's still some time at night to do some stuff as well. So it's a little bit different than some people might imagine who just want to get together and, have a good time and have a little utopia. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. There was one quote. I don't have it perfectly, but you made one statement in that video that I watched, and it started off, and you're kind of just like, oh, freedom is a joke or whatever, and like I kind of really agreed with it, and because I really actually have used this quote and kind of quoted you in different conversations with people because it's true. It's like any societal infrastructure, you need laws. Like you need not necessarily like laws, but you need rules. Like because in that part of the video you were just talking, like it might have been around the part where you're picking up trash for somebody's, and it's it would be easy for somebody to come into a situation like that, or even any sort of societal infrastructure, and just if they're just going to do their own thing, they easily could then ruin everything. They could ruin everything you've worked to accomplish. And I've never really heard it put that way, but I really did agree with that after I heard that, and that's honestly a really cool aspect I think about your place, and that, you do want to create this like, this place where people can come and enjoy and learn from, but like it is important, you know what I mean, that people like abide by, not, I don't want to call it just like rules or laws, but you know what I mean, that things have to be done in a certain way if you want to sustain the infrastructures that you're creating. And I think that's kind of a powerful concept that I think many people are like, oh yeah, like ultimate freedom, we all need to be free. And I just, it's not necessarily true. Like I think there's definitely, to get a certain goal, which for you guys might be like, the sustainable culture, the energy efficient sustainability, like you do need to sort of give things up. And I think that part of my own sort of journey and discovery is in sustainability, I guess, is just kind of not necessarily give up comforts, but just sort of like realizing that, hey, like I really don't need this. And like, it doesn't, it's not always so obvious, but a lot of things that we take, not necessarily take for granted, but things that we think are normal aspects of culture and society, like are pretty harmful. And like, as soon as you give those up, it kind of it helps. Like, and it's not, I guess I don't have all the words for it right now, but
Yeah.
I think that, yeah, I think that
No, I think
that's
that's really
definitely
well
like a really
stated.
important.
Yeah, it's very well
What's
stated,
that?
and it's interesting. I mean, you're quite young. You're 20 years old. Do you have friends that also think this way, or are you kind of unusual?
Uh, well, I'm pretty unusual, but interestingly enough, I have friends that have kind of opened me up to different things. Like I have basically 2 years ago, I went to a graduation party for my friend's older brother who was in a culinary school in Providence, Rhode Island, and he was the one who got me into sort of realizing a lot of the genetically modified food stuff, and like he kind of turned me on to the whole organic stuff and just
Mhm.
that sort of lifestyle. And so it was that it was that exposure that got me to research it and make my own ideas about it and really learn about it for myself. So I think I have a lot of friends who are into different things, but I don't know anybody who's almost as intense about it as I am, in the sense that like this is kind of like all I care about in a way,
Yeah.
is sort of building this sort of community and like, creating that next generation of culture. And I think that for a while I'd been abandoning things and aspects of culture, even from like a young age, like 15 or 16. I was just like, no, like I don't like learning this way. So I ended up kind of skipping a lot of my classes and just going out and driving and traveling and learning things in my own way. And like I think that it's that I think I just have a bit of confidence that some people don't, I guess, in following like my own path. Whereas like I think about it almost as a comfort thing. Like a lot of people want that comfort. They want the comfort of the plan, to know that, okay, I'm going to be able to have this money to support this lifestyle, and it's a comfort aspect. Whereas, you can see it as negative or positive, but I'm kind of like flying by the seat of my pants in a way. Whereas I'm not really interested in setting up those comforts so much
Mhm.
as I am exposing myself to the challenges that'll make me stronger, and kind of ultimately moving towards my ideal.
That's pretty cool. Do you read much?
I mean, I can't really say that I have read a lot of books. I mean, I read a lot of, internet articles. I read a lot
Mhm.
online, but
Yeah.
as far as, literature, I probably don't read as much as I really watch videos, which is kind of
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's one of the reasons I want to make videos too. I have
Yeah.
some of the best books on permaculture. One I like a lot is the Permaculture Handbook. It just came out recently,
Hmm.
and that's a real nice overview. One of the things that's interesting about permaculture is that it's often focused just on plants and growing things and food.
Yeah.
And really, it sounds like we're both agreeing and in tune with the idea that we want to look at more expanded view of permaculture about culture as a whole,
Hmm.
looking at the whole system.
Hmm.
Because even though the food is extremely important, it's all the other
Oh
stuff
yeah.
too. It's the architecture. It's how we relate. Are we honest with each
Oh
other? How do
yes.
we deal with property rights and water use and all that? So uh, the things that we're doing here in the Bosque, I think you'll enjoy in that regard, because I look at the thing really holistically of how can we stop living the way we're living. I don't
Hmm.
actually believe that as a society we're going to change. Um, Unfortunately, I think we're only going to change when we're forced to, when we have energy constraints and we have to suddenly think in
Hmm.
innovative and new ways about how to survive. And in some cases, some very old ways. A lot of the old ways were very good, in terms of food
Oh yeah.
preservation and how we lived. So a lot of this place is about the exploration of the oldest ways of doing things, and then also the most modern. Like right now, we're talking on a laptop. I'm actually very pro
Hmm.
technology for lots of it. I want cameras, I want laptops, I
Yeah.
want
Yeah.
internet connection, and I want to also be testing out some of the best options for LED lighting, for example, or energy generation. So, and
Hmm.
for me, there's a scientific aspect of that, of like really in a rational, critical thinking way, looking at how are we living and what is it doing to us. And it might be in some
Oh,
cases we're back to making rabbit skin clothing like cavemen,
for sure.
and in other cases we're going to be working on evaluating the fanciest new way to generate electricity. Um, so that's a fun
Oh
process.
yeah.
Another question for you: what kind of in terms of your life, your social life, what kind of people do you tend to enjoy or hang out with?
Well, I
Or do you
guess
dislike?
I guess I'll start off with saying I have like one sort of best friend, and I've kind of had one best friend my whole life that I just grew up with on the same street. And so I guess I like to be really open, like, because I'm at this point, like, I've always kind of been just so like really intense, like with not like with my beliefs as in I need to like hold everyone to it, but like I guess I can't always like hang around people and not um talk about things that are like uncomfortable to talk about. Like I kind of like I'm kind of like a loner in a sense. Whereas I've always had my one best friend to kind of confide in, is like he's kind of like my brother at this point. You know, he's not even a friend. Like there's been times where we don't like each other, but the relationship's just too long to just throw it away, you know? But so I guess at this point I feel like I just like to learn from other people. So I like to really be open with a lot of people, and I kind of come at it from like a psychological aspect of, okay, how much of myself do I really am I really going to share with this person before they're like, oh, you know, this guy's crazy. Like I don't know if I can enjoy him, because I guess for me, like I'm not really so concerned with like having fun, like hanging out with people. Like I
Mhm.
guess I've never really had friends like that where I just go over and like we hang out and we have a good time, like and like I have in the past more than I do now, but I think at this point like I kind of just like to meet people and I like to kind of analyze them psychologically, and that's kind of what I do. And like I just gradually kind of limit how much of myself that I expose to people, not in the sense that I'm trying to hide what I believe, but I think that people get turned off to like my intensity at times. Whereas like you know what I mean? Like if I'm gonna go to like a college party, you know, all these people that I know that I could go and hang out with who are drinking and stuff, like I don't really function well in that setting.
Mhm.
Whereas like if you know if people are all gonna hang out and they're gonna drink and they're just gonna say, oh yeah, like that movie was awesome, like that, oh did you see that, like you know this song, this that, and like I can do that in a sense, but I think that like I don't stick to like enjoyment, like you know what I mean. I like to talk about and I like to, you know what I mean, explore what doesn't make me happy, and like I really like to just get that spectrum. And I think just the people that I'm around in this area of the world don't don't like to do that as much. And
Yeah.
that, you know, that's kind of just a thing that I think, and that kind of leads me to I don't know. So I guess like I'm just kind of like a loner in a sense. Like I've really just like felt very confident in myself. Like, you know, I'm very content alone. Like I like being alone. Like I've built a consciousness around that. Like everything that I think and how my brain processes is just,
Mhm.
you know, around myself. Like I'm very confident. And I think a lot of people have had relationships and, you know, have lived a life where their emotional confidence and, you know, kind of what they're looking for is to be able to confide in other people in a
Right.
sense. Whereas, you know, okay, like I'm into this, and okay, so they're into that as well. So let's share that good experience. Whereas I've not really ever had that. So I'm kind of like, you know, this is what I'm all about. This is what I have going on. But like I've reached a point where I can respect it, you know, everyone else in their journey. But I
Mhm.
think most of the people that I talk to around this part of the country are just they're kind of psychologically like they're easy to analyze for me in a sense, because I feel as though they're looking for a satisfaction either in other people to confide in emotionally, like to say, okay, what I'm doing makes sense because all these other people are doing it, versus also like I can confide in this music, like I can confide in this video game. Like I think there's a lot of kind of trying to escape in a sense, like, you know what I mean? Like I don't want to think about what's really hurting me. I don't want to think about how lonely I am. Like I don't want to think about, you know, like what's hurting me, what I'm doing that's hurting myself. So I'm going to go hang out with these people and forget about that. Or
Right.
I'm going to go play this video game, or I'm going to forget about that. And like, I feel like I've done that in the past. Like I used to play a lot of video games, and that's, I think that's a huge thing, is that we've created all this content, all these movies, all these shows, and now we have Netflix. Now we have the PlayStation 4, these super advanced technologically advanced devices for the purpose of, you know, living vicariously through that media.
Right.
And so I guess I don't relate well to that. So
Yeah.
I kind of end up just I end up just kind of analyzing people psychologically, but that's only one aspect of it. I mean, like I do like to just like hang around and like enjoy myself too, but I think I do it in a very different way than most people that I meet. And that's just like there's a very few amount of people that I can kind of say that are kind of on the same track, whereas they're they're very confident in themselves. And I guess like that's kind of where I'm at, is like people that I like to hang around with. I really like
Yeah.
people who are ultimately totally confident in themselves and know how to be alone and know how to confide in themselves, but
Mhm.
also have taken that to say that I don't need to, push my beliefs or views on anybody. Like that's a huge
Yeah.
important part to me as well, is that, I have all these crazy ideas, I have all these beliefs, but I want to hear yours, because I
Yeah.
probably never would have thought about like your aspect of consciousness. So
Yeah.
I think that my whole thing about hanging out with anybody is just a one big psychological analysis of how everything in your life has led you up to who in front of me, and that's just where
I,
I'm at, I guess.
I'm not sure you're supposed to say that. It might make people nervous. It won't make me
I
nervous,
know.
but because I do the same thing, and I think that's pretty common actually. I mean, as we meet people, we're always,
Hmm.
if we're thinking people, we're often categorizing and judging, and often inaccurately, sometimes accurately, sometimes that
Oh yeah.
changes over time. But I think we all do it, and all we can do is try and, like you're saying, kind of have an open mind with people, give them their space and respect where they're at.
Hmm.
Because yeah, that is an interesting point, and that's one of the aspects of culture that's very important to me here. Is that even though I want this base of rules, so there's order and we protect the forest and each other, beyond that, I actually want a very high level of diversity. I don't want us all to be having have
Hmm.
to believe the same thing or talk the same way. Some of the inspiration for the place comes from festival culture, where people who don't know each other get together and they play like children and have a wonderful time.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
they're not invested in each other. They don't have to be afraid of each other. And I like that aspect, but of course, festivals are completely unsustainable and often dangerous in some sense, and you're not getting a
Hmm.
real personal development of any depth. But so with festival culture, I kind of take part of it and I reject other parts. But I
Yeah.
definitely want there to be fun and diversity, and also fun in depth. Because when you talk about how you're dealing with people and partying and stuff, a lot of that's just so shallow. There's nothing new. It's boring,
That's
you
it.
know.
I totally agree
And
with
so my
that. Yeah.
hope is that we party at a more deep level, and that we actually don't just chit chat, that we get down to the shit in nice ways, respectful ways, but we actually start dealing with the stuff that we're all either trapped in or experiencing, and that people from very
Hmm.
different backgrounds, from different cultures, different nations, different classes, can come together with a base level of respect, and we can actually really really just get to know each other on a deeper level while being sustainable. Um, you've seen videos of the place, you've read about it. I've written a lot on Quora. So for anything about the place, you can almost do a Google search, rain catchment, Bosque Village, and you'll find stuff I wrote about rain catchment.
Okay.
My goal is to actually write about every aspect of the project. I could do a book, I suppose, but writing online works just as well, and everybody gets access
Yeah.
to it. So for now, that's the thing. Um, what questions might you have for me, if any, about living here, about pragmatics?
Uh, you know, I actually thought about that for a while, like what questions I might have to ask, and I guess I really don't have like too many questions. I feel like I I guess the only real question is, like how do you, generally when you however you usually, do this interview process, I know this blab thing is new for you, and I don't know if you've done video interviews before, but like when people get there, and do you usually sort of segregate them based on their interests, as to say that, okay, this person was coming down to learn about this and that, so we're going to try and get them into these sort of events? Like, how do you, like, I kind of understand, I feel, mostly about like what your values are, what you're trying to accomplish, but I don't, I mean, I'm curious more about like the visiting aspect. Like, how do you
Sure.
take in visitors and use them to your benefit,
Right. It depends, and it's changed over the years. Great question. Um, First, there's no one way to come here, really. I very much adjust things according to people's interests. So, for example, if you're interested in permaculture, I've got great permaculture books, I've got great permaculture videos, and then I've got examples of things we've already built. And then you can also get involved with actually building those. So you could be building a composting toilet, you could be building a gray water system, you could be improving the rain catch, whatever, all these different systems. Plant propagation, many people are interested in. So I have so many different types of projects and a big spreadsheet for them that I can pretty easily route people into what they're most interested in.
Nice.
If like a woman was just here who wanted to experience killing a rooster or an animal to see how she felt about that relationship with meat. And so I provided that experience, and she learned something. We made a video of it so other people can also be thinking, what kind of meat am I eating? Why am I eating it? What's my relationship with it? What's life and death that I'm causing? So other people are more interested in architecture and building. We have always building projects going on. There's going to be some other things that are a little bit unusual in roles. I want to improve our use of social media. And then, as we've talked about at different times, I want to improve making the videos, which means I need people in front of the camera and behind the camera. Now you said that, so the short answer there is there's a lot of different ways to be here, and it's adjustable. So now you mentioned that you had some experience with making music, and did you mention you also had experience with video?
Yeah. I mean, I can't say that, I have like any great projects to like, have you watch or anything like that, but pretty much I went to a high school I went to two high schools, but the first one I went to was a brand new school. And so it was in a pretty, well-off community, and what they ended up doing was they had a MacBook for every student. And so they just gave everyone a MacBook. And so that was like my first laptop, personally. And so they basically, had this school with all this technology in it. All the teachers had smart boards, all these cameras and stuff. And so a lot of the projects that I ended up working on were in digital media. So rather than like writing an essay, it was like, oh, make a video about this or do that and do this. And so I think that was a really cool opportunity and a good experience to kind of learn how to make like digital media and all that stuff. So I kind of, I did a lot for school that I probably, wish I would have worked harder on, just to learn more. But then I kind of took that and I've, just made a lot of videos with friends. Like, I feel like I've just grown up with so much technology just all around me that, at this point, it's just normal to me, whereas it's probably not for a lot of people. And it just feels to me like, I'm not necessarily an expert at video editing, but if you gave, I have a camera, if you gave me a camera, I could use just, Microsoft Movie Maker. I could make a pretty good video, like I can, I understand a lot. And I think that beyond that, I got to see how other people were using, like, amongst all my peers, like, okay, we all had to make a video. Well, how is their videos coming out, and seeing the quality of those. And I think that I've been able to really like hone my skills for like projects. And the only way I can explain that is like, I always have a vision for things, and I think things don't always go how you want them to if you just go out with a camera and you try and just film things. Whereas to say, okay, maybe you could do that, but when you're trying to edit it together and make an actual video, it's really good to have a vision of to say, okay, this is what I want to communicate through this video, rather than just, throwing a bunch of clips together, which can be cool in its own way. But I think there's a good mixture between like just throwing up some raw footage and actually preparing a project. And I think that that's just something that I have a good amount of experience with, in just preparing projects and actually having a vision of what I'd like it to communicate, and just some of that preparation aspect. So
that's a very cool way to state that. What we're doing here is playing with the medium a lot. It's almost a new genre. And how much planning occurs will depend on the type of video we're making. So we might, for example, make a video about composting toilets. We're going to make an outline, and we're going to get the clips for it, and it'll be all organized. In other cases, we're just walking around, and we've been starting to do this, and we're just passing the camera back and forth while we're talking. And or sometimes we're just talking and we'll say, wait a minute, that's a really interesting conversation. We're leaving out the rest of the world. Let's start recording that. And then it's really natural too. It's not like we're acting. We're just repeating what we are already saying. So it sounds very natural, and it's fairly watchable, I think. So if you're here, that's one thing we'll be playing with is how to do this kind of genre, how to be our own camera people. Because I don't want it to be a thing where like the camera people are somehow this really separate thing, and then you're performing for the camera. No, I want it to be built into the thing, which it sounds like you've already done with your friends, where you're just making video. So it's a strange experience. I'm going to post a link for anybody watching. It's to a video we just made of going to town. And that was done by just passing the camera back and forth and doing what we were going to do in town. We did think a little bit about what might be visually interesting, or, oh, let's get this kind of angle a little different, or there's a noise problem. So, but in general, it's just as if you went to town with us. You're just a third person there hanging out with us. And that's kind of the goal. In that vein also, I don't want to make really polished videos. I don't want them to be highly produced. I don't want everything to look perfect. It's one of the things I don't like about some alternative people who are doing cool stuff is that they show you an unrealistic view of things. Like just today, we're making a video about some chicks I got, some baby chickens. And I hated to admit it, but I did it on camera anyway. The first 10 chicks we got died. They died in a storm because I didn't give them good enough housing. Now, if I wanted to be a cool, fancy teacher guy who does everything right, then I wouldn't say that. I would hide that. But I think it's very important we communicate the failures as well, and the experimentation process, because even the solutions we come up with here in the Bosque are not going to be necessarily magical good solutions for somebody else in some other climate with some other attitudes and things they're working with. So I would rather show the process of thinking, the critical reasoning. Why did we do it this way? What experiments did we do? What were the results? And sometimes, of course, we might not want to say it. Like we built some mosquito traps recently that didn't work at all. So I have not been motivated to share that, just because I would rather get a success before we actually show our failures. But that's going to be fun, part of the fun here. And it's the big puzzle. That's the science part. Yeah. Well, you seem like a great guy. I'd love to have you down here. I don't make decisions in these kind of conversations. I make decisions later, and I'm looking at what other people I've got available. But I think you'd have a really good time down here. I like young people that are energetic, and I love that you're into critical thinking. So yeah, what was the time frame you were thinking of coming down?
Well, truthfully, to do something that was planned for more of like a month, and so I actually I lived last year of my life in Colorado. The last month of that, I slept out in the forest, the Swan National Forest, and I just rode my bike into town, and like that's been a huge part of like my journey, is just kind of giving up those comforts and realizing that hey, like I actually enjoyed that more than having like a box to go in and waste time into. And that's just one way to frame it, you know what I mean? But I kind of like that way to frame it. Like I really liked living outside, and like I don't consider myself having been like homeless, but I chose that. I wanted to live outside, and it was a really good experience for me. And I think that's in a sense where I'm headed, and so I have like $2,000 right now. I could pretty much drive about anywhere and, get a job for some amount of time. But at this point, if I were to try and go down to the Bosque and whatnot, I would have to, I'd have to get a passport, and I'm not even really sure what kind of things are involved with visiting Mexico. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if you can just can you just go there? Like,
Yeah.
do you
Well, I'll
need
give
to
you the
say,
short
okay,
version
I'm
on
going
that.
here?
You do need a passport. You didn't just need a
Yes.
passport. You do need one now. If you're flying down or coming down, they just give you a FMM tourist visa. It's a visa. And that's good for 6 months usually. And
Okay.
so that
Good
gives a
stuff.
lot of flexibility. Um, I often talk to people about coming for a month because that's a lot of time. You really get the feeling for the place.
Oh yeah.
Of course, no one's ever trapped here. And of course, I retain the right to get rid of anybody who's a problem. But a month is a really good time to be here and experience the place. I don't think you'll have any problem with it being rustic, it sounds like. Some people do, but it'll be an upgrade from sleeping in the forest. We have beds and houses and roofs.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so, yeah, it's really not that bad. How's your Spanish?
I mean, I took many Spanish classes, and unfortunately, I wasn't really invested in them at the time. But I I consider myself just a really articulate person. Like, I'm just really wordy. I never really practiced or anything, but I just like kind of fluently speak. Really, I don't really think about what I say. It just happens, and a lot of people kind of say,
En
"Oh yeah,
español.
you framed that word." So I don't know. I think I put words together well, and like I think if I was actually
Entonces,
there in the situation, I could pick it up really easily because I remember quite a bit of like the
yeah, it's
different,
nice to have a base.
phases.
Entonces, si vienes por México, ¿piensas venir en un avión o por bus?
Yeah, I didn't really get any of that.
Okay, no estás seguro cómo vas a llegar.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, so you got a
I
lot of
think
work to do there. The
yeah,
nice thing is that the vision for the place is we're going to be making videos mostly in English because there's a worldwide audience for English, and a lot of the
hmm
Mexicans that I invite here speak some English. So you'll be able to
hmm
survive, but at the same time, you can also study Spanish while you're here and improve your Spanish. Because I think Spanish is a great language to know. I wish everybody in all of the Americas spoke both English and Spanish. That would be awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, not a real problem. Other pragmatics, it's really not that tough. I have on my website, how to fly in, where to fly into, and stuff like that. And then once you're here in the Bosque, it doesn't really feel particularly like anywhere. I mean, it's a forest. So it's a mix of
Oh yeah.
people that's really outside of the rest of the world. And of course, then Mexico's right nearby, so we can walk down into town like in that video with a link I posted.
Yeah.
Um, and then of course we get Mexicans coming here, and you get a good cultural interchange, which I also like because like back in 2000, I was a backpacker going through Mexico, and I didn't speak Spanish, I didn't meet anybody. You talk to your waiter, that's not a cultural
hmm
interaction, and it was still great, and that's how I learned Mexico is really awesome. But I do like there's things like couch surfing now where people can travel and then they can hook up with locals and get a real
Yeah.
experience of a place. So yeah, pragmatics, it's not really that tough. Once you're here, life's pretty simple. Um, it's dark at night. I don't think that's a problem for you. You got to have a light, a headlamp. It's cold at night. Not this time of year, but it does get cold in the winter at night. Not cold like Colorado cold. It never
Yeah.
freezes. So it's really a cushy, easy environment. Um, we don't use a lot of water, so we take saunas and then just dump water on us from a bucket to get clean.
hmm
And of course, we have composting toilets, so we're not wasting any water with that. So
Yeah, it's nice.
I think that the way things have developed here, it's a great way to live, and that if more people live like it, then we wouldn't be having the energy problems we do in the world, and some of the other problems as well. Cool. We're almost at an hour here. We got 8 minutes to an hour. So I'm pretty happy with the interview here so far. Anything else we should talk about?
Hmm. Yeah, I don't have your list of questions in front of me, but let me think for a second. Yeah, no, I don't know. Yeah, it seems pretty straightforward as far as the interview process. Yeah, it's
Cool.
yeah,
Well,
pretty
let's
good
let's bounce a
conversation.
few emails around over the next couple of days, and if you look at your life and where you're at, and I look at what I'm doing and who I'm having, we can figure out if we want to have you down here and make it work, and you'll have an amazing time.
Yeah, sounds like a plan.
Right. John, thank you very much for the chat.
You as
I'm
well,
gonna head
Brian.
out
Thanks
now.
for taking the time.
You bet. All right. Nos vemos.
Take care.